as it's become known, is spreading like wildfire across our world. It began with infected transformers, but soon spread to our human population as well. How many of us will be infected? Is there any cure? And if not, when will the plague end? And will any of us be alive to see the end?
In order to determine if an idea was good or not, supposedly the ancient Greeks used to debate the idea sober and then debate once again drunk. And if the idea sounded good in both states, then it must have been a good idea. This is anecdotal pieces of evidence that I have learned that may not be true. But despite that, I believe it has a fairly good lesson of the human condition wrapped up inside of it. And mostly, that lesson applies more towards men and the concept of post-nut clarity. Post-nut clarity comes about, and suddenly something that seemed like a good idea is no longer a good idea because the hormonal drive is no longer there. Which gets me into the topic that I want to talk about, which is testosterone. A lot of different ways of thinking, ideologies, and frameworks can be born out of hormonal imbalances, which is very interesting because sometimes some ideas can cause your limbic system to disperse hormones just at the presence of an idea. It takes a very well-trained person to be able to avoid some kinds of tactics that are used to infuriate others. I say well-trained, and you think, well, oh my God, it's going to be so difficult to train myself. But Two Crows episode of Rick and Morty, all training is complete because therefore all training was unnecessary. They say some shit. Hold on, let me pull it out of my mind. Training is complete because the trained to be untrained. Therefore, the untrained are fully trained, and training is complete. You train in order to make something a natural response. But your natural responses, quote unquote, are how you've been trained so far. And the thing about testosterone is when you get a hothead, you start to make certain kinds of conclusions. And it's funny because it seems that everybody with an increased amount of testosterone seems to make the same conclusions. And only when that level drops do they ever reflect and realize, oh man, maybe that wasn't the best way to do that. Maybe that wasn't the best approach to that situation. Maybe that wasn't the best way to handle that. And that's when you come up with the rationalization of, oh, well, maybe that was just my youth, my inexperience, you come up with all of these different rationalizations for what could have been as simple as a hormonal drive caused you to make a decision that when the hormonal drive is no longer there, you would normally not make that decision. Which gets into post-nut clarity. Post-nut clarity, your testosterone levels spike and then drop, which is what provides the level of clarity. They spike, you get cloudy-headed, you get kind of like maybe a little bit aggy, maybe you get a little bit agitated, but then those levels drop because you had your hormonal release, your hormonal drive was fulfilled, so then your body stops producing those hormones so that you no longer need them because you were fulfilled. You did what you needed to do. You don't need these fucking things no more. Get them out of here. It fucking drops the levels of testosterone. And then suddenly you're fucking looking at your screen and you're like, what the fuck is this? You get disgusted. You might gag a little. You're like, oh God, I was watching that. Why did I think that was good? That's like the worst end of the spectrum. The fucking lightest end of the spectrum is like, oh, I feel gross now. Sometimes that's how people feel just afterwards. They just feel gross because the hormonal drop is not there anymore. And they're like, well, why was I even thinking that way? The grossness comes out of a rationalization. I'm saying all of this because there's fucking rhetoric, okay, man? There's this rhetoric that goes around that can, like I said a moment ago, spike your limbic system. And there's specific rhetoric that actually targets your testosterone in men and will make your pre-programmed limbic responses work against you. And that's certain ways of thinking. That's competitive mindset. Ultra-competitive people usually have really high levels of testosterone because they have such a hormonal drive to be competitive. I'm somebody who has registered and recognized that he has had a high level of testosterone from a young age, and so thus I have actively avoided things that could exacerbate it or make it worse, like competition, and I've actively ran towards things that could make it better, like marijuana. In my case, marijuana makes it better because it's a phytoestrogen. Phytoestrogen is plant lady hormones. It's lady hormones from a plant. Since I have such a high level of testosterone, I smoke. The two kind of balance each other out a little bit, and I come to a more conscious level. But since I have such a high level, what my conscious level is actually like the normal level of most people. It details my difficulty with my own hormonal balance and actually details my understanding of it so deeply. Like, why does this guy understand this shit? It's a lived experience for me. It happens almost every single day that I go through a hormonal cycle of like peaks and troughs, and I have to be wary of my own kind of way of thinking and what it could be in conjunction with the time of day, because your circadian rhythm and your body's own rhythm disperses hormones and shit like that throughout the day. So at night, your circadian rhythm will help you disperse melatonin from the base of your spine. And that will travel down your spinal cord, and it will travel throughout your body and help relax you and put you into a more tranquil state in order to fall asleep. But in order to wake up, the same system disperses cortisol and hormones like testosterone. And those hormones act as a natural kind of like wake up receptor in your brain. Also, sometimes too, your brain uses adrenaline to a lesser degree in order to wake you up. But for me, I had like bad regulation for my entire life. Always too much chemical for what my body could handle. So I used to wake up with too much adrenaline, which would cause a lot of panic in the morning. My body like figured out that was the quickest way to wake me up, and so it utilized that because speed was a variable in the morning times. Like, it was a necessity almost. Like, if you want to sleep in, then you got to use this chemical in order to move faster. And I always wanted to sleep in because getting up was so hard. Which goes into, that's definitely a hormonal imbalance kind of thing. But a lot of this like regulation through meditation and other means has kind of opened up my mind to, oh yeah, dude, just that way of thinking is going to make you mad. And like, I can name names and point fingers right now, but, and that might make it clearer for you as a listener to understand what exactly I'm talking about. But my reluctance to point fingers and name names comes about from a want to not give them more publicity than they already have. I don't necessarily want to say you're the bad guy because I just watched the Twilight Zone episode 4:00 and I totally understand what the fuck the point of that one was. But I do definitely want to call out the behavior because, like, dude, you got to stop talking like that and you got to stop acting like that because you're going to start pissing people off. But if I don't call off the certain kinds of people that do that kind of stuff, then it's like, well, damn, who is he talking about then? So I'll give an allusion to some kind of Romanian douchebag who likes to pimp out women over the internet. Somebody who's like that, you don't want to listen to his fucking ideologies, okay? He has a very, very fucked up and abusive way of understanding the world. And he might have toned down his abuse to a way that it was socially acceptable, but it's still abusive. And if you think that way, you're running the risk of becoming an abusive person yourself. And you're like, man, abusive is kind of a heavy word. What the fuck even is that? What does that even mean, dude? There's this like little voice in your head that tells you the right thing to do. And the more testosterone you have, the quieter that voice gets. It's still there, but you just can't pay attention to it as much because there's a lot louder signals going on. But that little voice that's telling you the right thing to do, that a lot of the times a testosterone-fueled environment will make you disregard, that little voice is right. And the more times you disregard that voice, the more times you're being abusive. Each time that you're fucking yelling at somebody, maybe you like to flip out at people in the fucking Pentagon. Each time that you're flipping out at people in the fucking Pentagon, and you're disregarding that little voice in your head that tells you the right thing to do, you're pissing off everybody around you. And their little voice is going to start getting louder and louder and louder the more you ignore your little voice. And they're going to say, this guy can't be acting like this no more. This is fucking unacceptable behavior. Because the person themselves isn't doing the fucking self-reflection necessary to realize, oh shit, that is unacceptable behavior, the way I acted like that. Why did I act like that? And then he's not coming to the fucking conclusions of why they acted like that. They're just going to keep continually acting like that. Which brings me to my next point. Self-regulation. That's self-assessment. The only person in this world that's ever going to do that for you is yourself. That's why it's called self-regulation. That's why it's called self-assessment. That's why you even bother including the word self in the partition of the word. A self-assessment. You just call it a fucking assessment if other people are doing it. But it's a self-assessment. You're the only person that knows the internal environment of your body. And the more you try to ignore your own internal environment, the more it's going to overlay onto your reality. And I don't mean that through like some like fucking mumbo jumbo type shit. I mean, if you ignore some shit, your subconscious is going to make you act in ways that you think that shit is okay. And you can't ignore that shit because the more you ignore it, the more your subconscious is going to make you act that way. Because we all like to think that we're very conscious individuals. But at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, fucking at the sum of it all, the subconscious is a major driving force behind our entire lives. We don't think about every time we have to palpitate our bowels. We don't think of every time we have to pump our heart. We typically don't think of every time that we have to breathe unless somebody says something like this and they bring your awareness to the fact that you're breathing, because your breath is like your doorway into your automatic nervous system. It's something that is both conscious and unconscious action. You can choose to take a deep breath, or your body can take deep breaths for you in a deep state of relaxation. If you're in a deep state of relaxation, your preset is going to be deep, fulfilling breaths. But if you're in a state of like tachycardia, rapid heartbeat, then your preset is going to be rapid breathing, because your body is going to say, well, we need extra oxygen for all of this blood flow that's happening right now. So it's going to increase the oxygen flow. But if you say drank an energy drink and you know that your heart rate is going to increase because you drank the energy drink, you can consciously kind of like slow down your heart a little bit. You find yourself maybe doing tasks too fast, and then you say, wait a minute, I drank an energy drink, I should slow down. You have a rationalization of why your heartbeat is so fast and what may be the cause, because you have a reason. But that's the problem with a lot of the rhetoric. It seeps into the subconscious, and it's not much of a very conscious act as drinking an energy drink. You don't really necessarily know that you're digesting this shit by listening to it. That's why it gets real subconscious, because everything you listen to, everything you hear, every single experience and sensation that you have, your subconscious is recording and trying to make sense of, so it can relay back to you a perception of reality. That was a heavy statement. So, like, the fact that you can't see your own nose is a very glaring fact that our brains are making up everything. It's right in front of our faces, guys. It's kind of so silly and funny that it seems like it was done on purpose, because it's literally right in front of our faces all the time, but the design of it is made so that we don't pay attention to it. But sometimes you got to pay attention to it, especially if people are like playing this rhetoric in the background or whatever. It's being uploaded into your subconscious. You got to start paying attention to, okay, well, where are these thoughts coming from? Where are these feelings coming from? Like, if you suddenly watch a podcast clip, a little TikTok of a fucking snippet of a podcast, they snuffed out the most emotionally fucking potent part of that podcast and turned it into a clip. So when you watch that little snippet, your heartbeat suddenly picks up, and you're like, dude, I'm fucking mad right now. That's going to start dispersing testosterone, adrenaline, and cortisol throughout your system. If you're a dude, if you're a woman, it might disperse estrogen, depending whether or not if you're, so that's the weird thing about it. Testosterone leads towards like aggressive behavior in men, but if you're a dude and you produce a lot of testosterone, your body should naturally convert it to estrogen in order to find a balancing point. Mine, like, doesn't. That's the problem. But if you're a woman and you have too much estrogen is supposedly the thing that makes them more like womanly traits, but in women, I think it makes them more aggressive. If you have high estrogen, then your body, a woman's body, will actually convert it to testosterone. That's when you have like high testosterone women. So like, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you're all going to be susceptible to the same kind of hormonal fluctuations caused by rhetoric. And I know this, dude. I'm so sensitive to shit that sometimes I do. Like, I'll be scrolling through shit, and suddenly something will happen. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, there's some kind of energy right here. And I start getting real kinds of nervous and shit. And then I'm so sensitive that I can actually stop when it starts. And I can stop everything that's going on. What's going to happen? What's the thing that made me emotionally react here? And I might go back within the video. It might have happened in the video, or it might have happened 2 or 3 videos back. That's what I say about, like, where absorbing this information might not necessarily always consciously be able to wanted to use a big word. I'll just use figure out where it's coming from, you know? That's because we absorb so much information so quickly in environments that are kind of fluid. Social media feeds are kind of fluid because if it updates on you, suddenly that thing that made you so emotional and you were typing a comment out to will just disappear. Now you're left to deal with all of those extra emotions. You have no way to do with it. You don't even know why you really have those feelings sometimes, so you don't know, like, a constructive means of dealing with it, like writing or art or whatever, and you're kind of left to fester. So that's why outlets are the biggest thing. And then healthy outlets are bigger than that, because, like I said, I smoke weed, but that's not a healthy outlet. It's bad for my lungs. It's bad for my brain, probably. I'd probably think a lot, like, I'd probably be a lot more ahead if I wasn't dealing with all of these hormonal issues, and trying to self-regulate it. But that's the nature of reality now, isn't it? What works for some people doesn't work for everybody. And what may be a healthy coping mechanism for one person can be an unhealthy coping mechanism for another. So that's why it really goes back into the self portion of it, the self-assessment, the self-realizations. Maybe you have a self-realization that art makes you feel the same way as post-nut clarity was. So then you start painting a whole bunch, and suddenly your brain starts to become a much clearer environment because you don't have so much influx of excess testosterone and hormones like that. It's really just like the modern day internet landscape is like fighting for control over your limbic system. That's the most succinct way to put it, I believe. Every single post or whatever you're seeing is basically like a ploy or an attempt to get your nervous system to have a response so that you emotionally respond to the content and become a fan. They want manic numbers. That's one of the things that I heard, I gleaned from my environment, is marketing has moved towards what they call manic numbers, because manic numbers are crazy. That's what you get, like 1 million followers in a month because you're just driving the fucking public mania, your Beatlemania shit. That's probably where it came about, was Beatlemania. Where the phenomenon was really first kind of studied. But now they have a way into your brain that sits in all of our pockets. And so what was a niche marketing form for like ultra popular superstars like the Beatles became like a widespread marketing strategy. And so they're trying to like use your own emotional responses in conjunction or against you to make you follow this person, to make you listen to this song. It's kind of sinister to a degree. It's kind of sinister. Because a lot of people aren't consciously aware of themselves in this way to even be able to put together a fucking podcast like this. And even me, myself, and I'm fucking struggling with it right now. I got some portions where I'm like, damn, I had a good way to convey that, but now that I'm talking, I can't pull it out of my ass no more. I can't pull it out of my brain because my brain is currently occupied. My subconscious is currently occupied with the task of driving my vocal box. That's what I'm saying. Like, the subconscious rules the day. When you ever notice that when you're talking, suddenly your brain kind of goes quiet? If you're somebody that talks to themselves. It's very difficult to like talk to yourself in your head at the same time that you're talking out loud. I can do it, but only in a way that I'm slightly... Shit, see, I just tried to do it and I kind of confused myself. Fuck. I used to be able to do it really well, but the weed thing. Weed kind of like made me be like, you got to start acting within the natural order of things, man. And I was like, all right, stop utilizing my brain for how it can't be utilized. But I get like a slight preview of the next word that I'm going to say when I try to use my internal voice at the same time as I'm using my external voice to make them say completely different things is really difficult. I can only focus on one word. Like right now I'm focusing on the word applesauce while I'm also talking right now. And ouch, that hurt. It didn't hurt, but it was just cognitively complex. Dude, and our phones are forcing us to do that all the time, like 24/7, 365, because we have so much cognitive input that the subconscious wants to respond to everything. And your subconscious is busy trying to respond to an online fucking basically fake conversation that happened 3 weeks ago with people that you don't even know, while you're also trying to sit down at the dinner table and have a conversation with people that you interact with every day. It's loading too many subconscious tasks onto the subconscious. If the subconscious was a computer, somebody's got to open up Task Manager and start closing some shit, because shit is going to start crashing because of the influx of information from fucking social media, from normal media, from fucking this, that, and the other place, from... your school, work, home, so much information, even just going to the grocery store. I remember a quote that was like, dude, if you went to the grocery store with like an absolute awareness about, like, if you had total consciousness and awareness and went into the grocery store, it would be an overwhelming experience. I forget who's, maybe Alan Watts said that or some shit. Yeah, if you had a conscious experience in a grocery store, it is overwhelming. I fucking had that once, and I was like, oh, I understand that quote so deeply now. Because I was in the grocery store, and then suddenly I was like, that's a fucking purposefully colored bright red sign to guide my eyes towards it to sell that product as a quote-unquote sale. And then I started noticing, like, oh, man, prices are written in a certain way to kind of confuse you so that you end up buying more than you need. There's just all these different little, like, sales and marketing tactics that they're using within the grocery store that is leveraged against your primate mind. Because your primate mind, when it goes hunting for food, it looks for delicious, ripe fruits. And so when you go to the grocery store, those colors of delicious, ripe fruits will cause you to gravitate towards grabbing that product, even if it doesn't have the same nutritional content as a delicious, ripe fruit. And that can be seen as rhetoric. That can be seen as my own rhetoric. That's something that can be seen as like, oh, dude, that's like low-key a little bit troubling of a thing to convey to people. That color theory is being used against our own subconsciouses. It almost constantly, to the point where it's guiding people to make decisions that they don't know why they're making them until you point it out that, hey, that was color theory. Then they start questioning every single decision in their entire lives. That's a type and form of rhetoric. But there's a difference between saying that and between saying something like, all men or women do this thing. Because it hits different centers of the brain. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you hit different hierarchies in the needs, like when you hit the different levels in the needs, different kind of emotional responses happen. So like food, I think is a pretty low level. So I think it's lower level in the hierarchy. So when you have a manipulation around your food environment, the necessity to survive and to keep consuming food outweighs the insult or whatever that may be caused by having figured out that you were manipulated through color theory to choose that product. The fact that you need to eat matters so much more than the possibility that they're manipulating you to buy this certain product, that you just end up buying the product and you kind of give into it a little bit easier. But when you get up higher into the hierarchy of needs where it gets to like mating and stuff like that, that's when you have more of a cognitive challenge, because that's something that is inherently difficult for everybody. It's just inherently difficult to find compatibility in a partner. Because it's such a big decision to be made on a genetic scale and things like that. The subconscious wants it to be a near perfect genetic match. So it starts a filtering process. And that filtering process needs to be just like breathing. It's a conscious and subconscious process working together, filtering out different kinds of mates to figure out which one is the most genetically or whatever have you compatible. And that's when it gets bad, because people interject rhetoric into that filtering mechanism, and the highest hierarchy is like what contributes to somebody's overall sense of well-being, I believe. So if you start fucking with like their ability to find a mate, you're gonna fuck with them all the way down the hierarchy, all the way until like maybe they just stop eating because they get so depressed about that kind of shit. It's something that can affect every layer of the hierarchy, in the same way that like if you stop eating, it's gonna affect every layer of the hierarchy. I guess maybe calling it a hierarchy is maybe a little bit of a misnomer, because without each part, other parts don't necessarily have the ability to exist. Like if you don't eat, then you can't find a mate. But if you start fucking with somebody's ability to find a mate to the level that that kind of like fuck with goes down the hierarchy, that's when it's kind of like a as above, so below type situation. And that's what we're seeing a lot now. That's why that shit was so popular a couple years ago, because karmically speaking, if you inform people before you do something, then you're not really karmically responsible, is how some people understand it, which I don't know. But they informed us through social media. Right around 2018 is when I saw a lot of that as above, so below type stuff being pushed, not just necessarily in the niche, but also it found a mainstream. There was that movie about the catacombs and stuff like that. So just to suggest it offhandedly or like slyly is supposedly karmically enough to outweigh whatever karmic backlash that may happen. But my whole thing is that try not to pay too much attention to that stuff, because that's how you drive yourself crazy. That's the rhetoric, dude. That's the fucking exact rhetoric that drives you crazy. It starts making your limbic system respond in certain ways that you're like, oh my God, if I do this, will that karmically repay against me in this way? No, man, it doesn't work like that, because if you're paying attention to it, the system doesn't work, because it's like a subconscious type system. It's a system that can only really operate within the subconscious, because it's the subconscious trying to understand actions. So that's why when somebody acts in a certain way and you judge it super harshly, years and years later, you might find yourself accidentally acting in that same way. And very few people put it together, unless they have that like framework of karma. The framework of karma kind of helps them remember, oh, I was super mad when somebody acted that way towards me, and now I'm acting this way. Oh man, I must have just made people super mad. And then you can kind of go about solving the situation maybe differently than that other person did. You could say maybe that other person never apologized in the past, and that's what really upset me. So then maybe you, having this framework and understanding of karma, can self-reflect and then go, hey man, I'm sorry. I got treated that way in the past, and I didn't like it. And that does not give me an excuse to have treated you now. That actually makes it worse, because I didn't like it when it happened to me. Why should you like it? And I totally understand, and I'm sorry. And that is growth, because you took the karmic cycle from the past. You took the thing that bothered you, and then you accidentally embodied it, but you knew that it bothered you. So then now in the future, you actually took extra actions that the person in the past didn't take to complete the wondering of the thought process. You wondered why somebody did that. Well, somebody might yell shit fuck a damn if they stub their toe. And then you go and you fucking judge them. You're like, how dare you say shit fuck a damn? You fucking dirty mouthed piece of shit. You fucking foul-mouthed scumbag. You fucking shit stain of the earth. How dare you say shit damn fuck a shit? Whatever I said. They get real fucking mad. They have an emotional limbic response to this shit. And then one day they're just going about their business and they stub their toe. And they're like, shit fuck a damn mad. And they fucking start saying a bunch of expletives. And then they're like, oh, that's why that guy fucking acted in that way? That's the problem with like thought contagions and the purveyance of some fucking negative ideologies. Is even if you disagree with a Romanian fucking piece of shit, pimp lord, I totally understand why the Romanian government got on that guy's case, because now I'm referring to it as this. They're like, dude, just quit fucking putting Transylvania down like that. We are not like that, dog. We are not this guy. They fucking locked him up for giving fucking Transylvania a bad name. They're like, Dracula all the way. Bram Stoker. 1904. I don't know when Bram Stoker came out. I don't know when Dracula came out. Maybe 1904, 1884, 1864. It's got a 4 in there somewhere. 1446. Yeah, I totally understand why they cracked down on that guy. They were bad. They were tired of the bad PR. And that's a different situation, because that dude was legitimately doing some bad stuff to people. And then you condemn him and you're like, that guy's doing some bad stuff. I'm getting so angry about it. But then years and years later, you find yourself on OnlyFans and you're like, why am I paying for this? And then you remember, oh my God, I'm acting exactly like how that guy acted beforehand, except I'm the customer half now. Maybe I condemned him so harshly that I prevented myself from getting the bag and I became a customer. That's karmic in a way. That's how the karmic cycle can be leveraged against you in a way that like, oh man, this person's pissing me off, so I'm never going to act in that way. But then in trying to avoid enacting that way, you end up not being who you were meant to be, because maybe you were meant to act in that kind of way in a different kind of way. Maybe you were meant to embody that energy, and that other person doing it wrong, or whatever you call it, may just be agitating you because you're like, man, no, I was the one. But we all think that we're the one. That's what makes the Lego movies so good, because the prophecy about being the one, you're all the special, dude. We're all the fucking special. That's what makes us special. That's what, going back to it, it's right in front of our fucking faces the entire time. Your nose is technically visible. You should be able to see your nose by all intents and purposes. But if you put a pencil, if you even just put your finger in between your nose, can't see it no more. I'm picking something up so I can put it in between my nose. And boom, I can't see it. It doesn't exist. It might as well not exist in the area between my two eyeballs, because my brain is filling in that space with other data. It's filling it in with the overlap of the two data. So, dude, just the fact that your brain is doing that much subconscious calculation to present to you vision is a doorway into understanding that your perception and how you see reality is a completely confabulated experience, even if it's confabulated by your own mind. And realizing that lets you be a little bit more weary of the things that you're consuming. You kind of stop consuming the guy who likes to go to Suicide Forest, because you realize that that guy who goes to Suicide Forest does not act as reverently as you might have acted in Suicide Forest. But then, this is the thing about judgment, is you judge him so harshly that you never go to Suicide Forest to act in that way. You never have the opportunity, because that guy used up all the opportunity acting like a douchebag. And you're like trying to avoid being a douchebag so bad that you're becoming anti-rhetorical. That's the thing, too. Not everybody responds to rhetoric in the same way. Some people, you get two groups. One person, they're both presented with the same rhetoric. One person may agree with the rhetoric and it strengthens their opinion, and one person may disagree with the rhetoric and it actually strengthens their opinion in the opposite direction. That's why it's unpredictable. Free will is a very unpredictable thing, because based upon the people's frameworks, that's how they'll respond to a certain kind of rhetoric. And basically my whole thing is break the framework. See outside of the rhetoric. See above, and then see below, and then see how the two are interacting with each other. And then try to go directly into the system itself and fill around until all of the unwanted components are no longer there. And unwanted components might just be negative feelings. And how do you solve negative feelings? The best way to solve negative feelings is within the self. Negative feelings is yourself trying to rationalize something. So if you look at it and you try to rationalize it, and you support the subconscious in the rationalization of it, rather than fighting with it, that you two can work together into solving your emotional problems. I had an emotional problem. It bothered me a shit ton. And it bothered me for years. And I kind of just came to like a head. I popped. And I wrote a big, long, angry letter. That's what I do. I know that I can think of anything in the entire existence. So I just try to write it all in a letter. It's just a fucking angry letter. I have a very good memory, so I just remember shit. And I'm like, this thing pissed me off on this date back then. I just fucking go ham. And this one thing reached ahead. And it was something I was trying to ignore that made me really upset. And I was trying to not be upset by it. Because, like, being upset by it is, like, I'm not as cool as I am. If that shit upset me, I'm not actually as cool as I fucking am. But that shit upset me. And I finally reached ahead and I wrote the letter. And I was actually like, oh man, I feel like I'm being watched to a degree. So maybe I shouldn't have wrote that letter. Because some people might think about that letter. I mean, watched on a very magnifying type scale. And anyways, a few days later, though, I looked at the letter again with the rationalization of, oh shit, this isn't how I want to present myself. I kind of rewrote it, and I didn't necessarily rewrote it. I just added some more to it. I added some more rationalization. Like, this is a few days later, and this is how reading that made me feel. I kind of forgave the person a little bit. I tried my hardest to just forgive the person. Now that I finally understood their actions and I rationalized it, I kind of was like, whatever. Like, not even just like whatever, just like, I understand and I get it. Then I had a fucking dream. That dude came to me in a dream, and it scared me in the dream because I was like, I was just thinking about you. It's scary. And he, even in the dream, was like, hey, man, I know that, like, I'm scaring you, but that's the exact reason why it needs to be me, because that fear is going to bring you to conscious awareness so that you can remember this. And it's very imperative that you remember this. He grabbed me by the shoulders and he said, don't take the opioid. And then I woke up and I was like, what the fuck? And it was a very long dream. So I wrote down the rest of the dream that I knew I couldn't remember, but I didn't want to write this part down because I felt so weird about it. I was like, I don't want to write that down. I feel so weird about that, mentioning that. What is he doing in my dreams? I'm so angry about that. I'm so not angry about that. I'm so confused. I had the fucking stomach flu. I had some kind of stomach bug. And that day, I woke up and I started throwing up and shit. So I was like, this is day 3. I got to go to the hospital. I went to the hospital, and when I got there, they tried giving me an opioid. They tried giving me morphine. And I was like, can I not have that, actually? I've had some adverse reactions in the past. I'm just kind of weary about taking any opioids in the future because a different one, made my insides feel itchy. I don't like the feeling. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. So they gave me an anti-inflammatory instead. But then they sent me home with one, and I was like, I don't want that. So I never filled the prescription. I was like, I heard the dream. I'm going to actually listen to the dream. I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to feel that. I actually don't need it. I can deal with this pain level. The pain isn't so bad that I can't deal. The pain is bad. It definitely was a fucking pretty high level of pain, but I was like, let me just deal with it anyways. Let me just soldier on through, because it's not so bad that ibuprofen won't help. It's not so bad that acetaminophen won't help. So I stuck with just ibuprofen and acetaminophen, and that helped. And there was no need to take the opioid. So that dream that he came and fucking warned me actually changed my reality. Something that was going to happen, some impending thing that was going to happen to me, didn't happen because I decided to just let go of my anger and forgive this person. And then this person, my brain used it once I had not such terrible feelings around it. My brain used this person, if you want to think about it, not being psychic. Maybe this person had not thought about me in years. Maybe they don't give a fuck about me. But maybe just forgiving them freed up my brain enough to use their figure, their reconfiguration, their confabulation of their image to present a message to myself that I could understand a little bit better. Because when you're yourself talking to yourself, it confuses your mind. So if you're sending yourself messages throughout time, your mind must fucking assume another form so you can convey the information. And my mind was like trying to avoid a very certain timeline and was like, don't fucking do it. And I was like, you know what? It's very weird that I'm at the hospital and I'm in when I woke up too, I didn't want to write it down because I was like, when am I ever going to get an opioid? And then to go to the hospital and be offered it, I was like, oh, fuck, this is when it all kind of clicked. Also, trigger warning for people that have fear of needles, fear of blood, but I went to get a fucking IV, dude. Oh my God. They put the tourniquet on my arm, and then he was like, little poke, and I have a fear of needles, so I don't like looking at it. I turned away. I turned my head fully to the left. As soon as he started taking out all the products that had needles, I was like, no, I'm not participating in this. And I turned my head, and he was like, little poke. And I was like, yeah, little poke. We got this. We can do this. And then he was like, oh, wow, that's such a good vein. And then the other lady came by. She's like, oh, wow, what a great puncture. Wow, that was such a good job. And he's like, yeah, right? Like, it's so good. It's amazing. And I was like, wow, I kind of want to check this work out a little bit. They're talking it up. This just sounds like it was like I'm being overreactive right now. I'm being a big baby, They're talking about that was routine. It was perfect. It was fucking phenomenal, almost even. And then I decided to look, and there's like a fucking fountain of blood. Yeah, there's fucking blood everywhere, dude. There was fucking blood all over the floor. There's blood all over their little table. My arm had turned into a tiny fountain because of the pressure of the tourniquet. Had put a lot of pressure in the vein, and then it fucking just popped, and it started splattering out everywhere. And then I started getting fucking dizzy, dog. And I was like, oh my god. I almost wanted to cry because I have such an intense fear of needles and blood, dude. It's weird. It started with needles, and it was kind of like only blood associated with the needle at first, and now it's kind of just like blood, dude. Large amounts of blood make me uneasy. I'm like, that's not normal. That's too much to be on the outside. Oh god, dude, that shit was so fucking messy. But it's like really good on them, I guess. Like, they didn't want to make me freak out, and they maybe didn't think that I would be so willing or like curious to look. So they kept trying to be like, everything's fine over here, but they didn't realize by saying everything is fine over here that they were making me think that it was okay to look. And then so I looked, and I was like, And then she like wheeled the cart away, and I was like, ma'am, there's still blood all over the side there. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Sometimes you just gotta have a release, you know? They used to do, bloodletting for people that had stomach issues back in the day. Maybe that was what they were doing, but they didn't say that they were doing that. Oh, gross. So gross. My arm hurts. I'm feeling sensitive. I don't like needles. I really don't like needles. They make me freak the fuck out, dog. Which is funny because I have a bunch of tattoos. You're like, really? And I'm like, that was an attempt for me to try to get over the fear. I was trying to get over the fear by getting a whole bunch. It didn't work. Because tattoos, they have a different energy. The thing's got different energies. And that's why it goes all the way back to the Energy Podcast. Yo, go check it out. If you haven't yet, don't check it out. If you haven't, because I've tried to listen to it a couple times. I'm like, this sucks. So if you feel the same way, don't feel pressured to force yourself to listen to it. Some of the times, though, like, sit through it. There's a joke or two in there that you might like. But it really goes all the way back into like the energy thing, man. There's like a different kind of energy in tattoo needles than there is in medical needles. And it's that medical fucking kind of vibe, that medical sadism. It's not always sadism, but like medical necessity at the cost of pain. Like, you need to, like, why haven't they developed a needle that works sort of like a series of mosquito fucking noses that doesn't hurt at all to extract blood? Just kind of like a little sticker that you put on, and then you put the vacuumized tube on, and it sucks all the blood out, and it doesn't hurt. It's that kind of like, well, being treated is gonna hurt a little bit thing about the field of medicine that kind of makes me scared. Like, if you want to be treated, you must be willing to be cut open. And it's like, man, you haven't found a non-invasive way to do that yet? Where's the Star Trek fucking technology at, man? What the fuck? Thought we were in the fucking 21st century, dog. What the hell? But then that also goes into, like, the energy behind the rhetoric, dude. Like, yeah, some of those guys, their energy behind that rhetoric is just testosterone-fueled fucking rage. And you gotta call a square sometimes. That's just how testosterone-fueled, rageful people think. And to fucking be providing catalysts for that type of thinking is bad. If you're somebody with a high testosterone level, you shouldn't be going around saying everybody else should be like me to normalize your own bad behavior. You should come up with methods that help you handle it. And then you should weigh the pros and cons of those methods, of whether that is a proper thing to convey. And for me, things like talking it out, which is why I keep doing the podcast, even though it's embarrassing a little bit. Sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to take that down. Some of them I did, because I was like, that's an unhealthy person's view of the world. And I took them down, because I was like, no, that's not congruent to this kind of ideology of, like, you have to put out into the world what you want to get back. I don't want to put out angry vibes, so I'm not going to have a fucking podcast that has angry vibes. It's probably still accessible somewhere. You could probably find it if you wanted to. And then when you find it, you'll be like, oh, this is the angry one he was talking about. But I'm not going to point it out. Because I realize the concept of thought contagions. And that's exactly what's happening with a lot of these negative dudes. They rationalize shit in a negative way. And then they pervade a thought contagion. And then when people hear it, like, listed out in a real well-defined linguistic argument like that, and it sounds all cool and shit, and they make that ideology seem like it was their contributor to success rather than the underlying factors of, like, a whole bunch of other variables at play turning into their luck and favor. You start contributing that ideology with success, and you think, well, people who are successful think this way, and that might not necessarily be true. So then it reinforces a negative belief that's not based in reality. And what do we call that? A belief not based in reality? A delusion. And a lot of people keep falling for this delusional thinking. And it actually kind of presents a question that I've been trying to wonder myself and trying to figure out. But I think that's a good way to end the podcast this week. I think I would like to present it to the public, to the world, and like, can I please have some feedback on this? Because I can't figure it out yet. This is how you figure things out, is feedback. So delusions of grandeur are villainized. People oftentimes take delusions of grandeur and they're like, that's bad. You shouldn't hope for the best like that. You're hoping for too much good there, buddy. They always kind of like dial you down a little bit, but that urge to dial somebody else down for their grandiose visions of the future, like what if somebody like Walt Disney was diagnosed with delusions of grandeur and medicated, instead of actually pursuing his dream of animating and opening up a fucking theme park and shit like that? He had a delusion of grandeur, but then what's the thing that made a difference? Was it his ability to do it? Was it just his luck and happenstance that put him in the positions that he was able to do these things in the ways that he was able to do them? And that goes into my question, which I presented a couple of there, but my real question is, it goes more towards those. Why are we not looking at those people that try to tear down grand visions as also being mentally unhealthy as well? What is the opposite of delusions of grandeur? And why isn't that treated and discussed to a same level as delusions of grandeur? It's like, I tried to figure it out, and the best word I could come up with is anti-grandeur. You're so opposed to things and how they could be good that you develop this delusion of like inferiority, this delusion of anti-grandeur, that anything that could be grand, you automatically discount and say it's impossible because you have this delusional way of thinking. What would you call that? I said anti-grandeur, but even still, I feel like that's not exactly what it is that I'm trying to get at. But it's that delusion that is far more detrimental and dangerous and far more widespread than delusions of grandeur. Delusions of grandeur can lead to mania, which is definitely an issue and not to be discounted. But I think delusions of anti-grandeur can lead to depression, anxiety, and all of those other kinds of afflictions that we see so widespread throughout society today. And I think it's that like the yin and yang kind of balance between delusions of anti-grandeur and delusions of grandeur that's creating this kind of radicalized youth that are being radicalized by like rhetoric that was deemed as completely fucking false or a negative way of thinking 20 years ago. It was almost admonished ways of thinking. Admonished, it was definitely condemned. I don't know if admonished means condemned, but to think in certain ways, which would be sexist, misandrist, or misogynist, and those ways were condemned nearly just as much as 20 years ago. Just as recently as 20 years ago. Even less, just as recently as yesterday, with the posting of somebody else's rhetorical, angry podcast, or TikTok, or whatever. So yeah, why are these negative, hormonally delusional ideologies allowed to be pervade? And why are more positive ideologies being condemned at the same time? If both were being pervaded to such a degree, then I wouldn't really have much of a question. But it's why is it that there is either one or the other? There is either grandiosity or there is terribleness. Why can't there be some kind of middle thing where all things are possible? I guess the concept of all things being possible is a little bit overwhelming. And I guess maybe my own mind is kind of getting a little bit lost here. So I'm going to call it quits right about here. Consider the questions that I asked about what would you call that that term of what I'm trying to call out here. Do you feel the same way about it? Think about it deeply, chew on it, spit on it, and get the fuck out of here.